have for you a special treat, that we have Miss Andrews, who's being interviewed by a member of the press to give us more of a perspective on Emancipation Day.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Andrews. I am Lizzie Smith with the press, and I'm here to interview, and I know there's been a lot of excitement in Punta Gorda today, and I'm on assignment to write about the Florida Emancipation Proclamation celebration today. And I'm working for the Tallahassee Democrat.
Wow.
I was told that you were the person I needed to talk to.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Smith or Lizzie.
You can call me Lizzie.
Well, you can call me Queenie.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. I hope that you're having a good time here. Are you staying at our big luxurious hotel?
No, that's a little bit pricey for anyone working for a newspaper. But what I did do, I found a good boarding house to stay at.
Well, I guess our hotel, Punta Gorda, really is only for Teddy Roosevelt and people like that. Anyway.
So why is this a special day for Florida?
May 20th, 1865 is the day that my enslaved ancestors in Florida, the day that we prayed for, they were finally free. Wow. Now they had to wait 2 years for this freedom to come, but finally it did happen. By the way, have you ever heard of Watch Night?
No, I don't believe I have.
Oh, okay. Well, on Watch Night is the night I think all the enslaved people stayed up. It was December 31st, 1862, and the word was passed that Lincoln was going to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. And so folks stayed up and prayed and sang and just said, you know, God, let him sign this proclamation. And so that's what happened.
Well,
but it wasn't, you know, until 1865 that this really happened.
What took so long after the proclamation was signed?
Well, word of mouth says there are a couple of things. There are some states and some slave owners who did not want or did not say that Lincoln was their president, okay? And so therefore they didn't release anybody. However, it was really the emancipation was about those states that were rebelling against the U.S. government. And so when those states surrendered, then of course you could read the proclamation out there to them. Now in Florida, General Mack Cook actually came on May 10th, and he had to get all of the Confederate soldiers, you know, together. They all had to surrender. But on this beautiful, glorious day on May 20th, he went to the Knott House and he stood out there and he read the Emancipation Proclamation, and our ancestors in Florida were free.
Wow. So what had to happen for freedom to come to the enslaved?
Well, it had to, you know, they had to surrender. All of these states that were in rebellion had to surrender so that they could come.
Did the celebration start immediately?
Yes, they did. The first celebration was started right there in Tallahassee, Florida. They went had a big picnic, and they started the celebration right immediately. Because you have to realize, in Florida, 60,000 people were enslaved here. Wow. And so when that day was wonderful.
I need to write that down, wait a moment.
Yeah, 60,000.
So how about other places in Florida?
Well, in Florida, we only celebrate on May 20th. That's the day that we celebrate, because that's the day that our ancestors were freed in Florida.
What's this I hear about Juneteenth or June 19th?
Oh, wow. Okay. Actually, the word of mouth had to pass. The Union troops had to go to all of these rebelling places. And actually, it was a whole month later before they got to Texas. And of course, when they got to Texas, then of course the enslaved were freed. Now, Actually, when you look at, because there were still 4 border states where there were still enslaved people, so on June 19th, everybody wasn't free. It really was not until December 6th, 1865, with the 13th Amendment, that slavery was really ended.
Wow.
But we in Florida, we just prayed and sang, and we appreciate May 20th, 1865.
So, tell me about your activities today. I hear there was a parade.
Yes, ma'am. Well, our main street here in Punta Gorda is Marion Avenue, and let me say this, I have to say, my community, I've said before that we colored enjoy living here because of the way our community is. On that day, when we have our Emancipation Parade, everybody turns out, white and colored, come out to celebrate with us. And so what we do, we have the wagons that come down the street. And I don't know if everybody knows, we know a lot of colored troops were up in northern Florida, but in Fort Myers, the fort in Fort Myers, we had colored troops. The colored troops were actually in that fort.
Wow.
And we had a lieutenant who wanted to come up here, and he liked Lieutenant Nathan DaCosta. He had seen the area around Punta Gorda. He and 4 of his ex-colored soldiers came up and actually established a community called Hickory Bluff. Now, some newcomers have called it Charlotte Harbor, but we call it Hickory Bluff. Those 5 men, they worked together, they put a sawmill there, they had stores, there were about 12 families, they had a church, they all just worships together. So it was really beautiful. So those men ride in our wagon. So we have John Lomans, and John Lomans during Reconstruction actually was a tax collector here.
Wow.
So we have Joseph Chapman, he rides with us. We have Richard Hamilton, he rides with us, and Mitchell Harrison. They all are people we honor in our parade because they fought for our freedom. Now, another very special person is O.B. Armstrong. O.B. Armstrong was a free man who joined the 2nd Colored Troops. And he was very popular as a Republican. When we had our constitutional convention, he was one of the senators there.
Wow.
So he has his own wagon where we honor O.B. Armstrong. So what happens is that folks just follow the wagons, all of the people that we are honoring are in the wagons, and we just, you notice that where it's kind of warm out there. We follow the wagons and just sing our special song, "Oh Freedom," just as we're following the wagons.
Oh, that's a wonderful song. The church I belong to has that in their hymnal, and I really like it.
You know that song?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't realize that.
Well, I mean,
Would you sing a verse of it for me?
well, we can all sing together, actually.
You would just sing a verse for me so that.
Okay. All right, okay.
I just can't believe this, that you know this.
Well, that's, like I said, it means a lot to me too. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me, and before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave, and go home to my Lord and be free.
Lizzie, you can go ahead. I just have chills from hearing you sing that. And I have to say, you do not know how much it means to me that you appreciate our freedom song. Thank you so much for caring.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, just beautiful. Have cheers for that.
Me too.
Well, tell me more about the day, especially the program.
Okay, Of course, everybody in town is invited. And what we do, we have it at our baseball field. You know, we in Punta Gorda are colored. We play baseball on Sunday, Saturdays, because Sunday everybody's in church, but on Saturdays we play. But anyway, we go to the baseball park, and first thing we do, of course, is ask the eldest person for permission to start. And they give us permission. And then we pour a libation around for our ancestors, to honor our ancestors. We start with just little stories about, from the older people who can remember, like Auntie Annie Roberts. Now she was just a child, but her mother was enslaved. And she said when the word came, she was up in Mariana. She said they were banging on that those big black pots out in the yard. They were banging on them and just singing and all of that. So we get all the old people who want to tell a story, if they remember. All of them haven't been enslaved, but they've had parents or grandparents, so they know the stories. So they tell all of our stories. And then we have our keynote speaker, which this year is going to be Obie Armstrong. And my brother-in-law, Dan Smith, he's always the master of ceremonies for this. Yes, he is. So after Mr. Armstrong, after he talked about what freedom means to us, then what we do is have our kids from, we have 2 churches here. We have our Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. That's our Methodist church that Dan Smith helped to start. And then the children from St. Mark Missionary Baptist Church, they come, and we have all the children, and they sing "Oh Freedom," and it's just wonderful. Now, the very last thing we do is to take up a donation for our colored school. The county doesn't give us the same amount of money that they give the white schools, and our teachers need supplies, and of course, they only make half as much as the white teachers, so we can't ask them to buy supplies. Our school is the center of our community, like our churches. And so in my community, we support our school. So this is one of the occasions where everybody's gathered and we ask them to give a donation for our public school. Because we understand that education is freedom.
Yes,
and that's why we do it. So, after we have the kids, after we've done that, and we're ready to eat, I guess. So.
Well, it sounds like a really busy and fun afternoon.
It is.
Now, what about all that delicious food?
Well, I guess have you noticed the color of it all? What color did you notice?
Red.
It's red, right? All right. Food and everything about it, our flowers here, everything is red. The color red symbolizes both our culture and our spirituality. Okay, but the red, in terms of our spirituality, it represents our strength, life, and death. That's red, and in many of our villages we celebrate that. But it also, for our ancestors who were enslaved, it represents their blood and their sacrifice. It also is like the foods that we brought over, that came over, like the hibiscus or the cola nuts or watermelon, are red. So those are all kind of, when we look at in our culture, that red has significance. Now, the special thing that everybody's coming here for is, of course, Miss Cynthia. Miss Cynthia, she does a lot of cooking in our neighborhoods. And so for every time we have the Emancipation Day program, we go to her and she makes our wonderful red velvet cake, which is Emancipation Day cake. We always eat the same cake. And the punch that we drink is red also. We're remembering the sacrifices of our ancestors. And so we go, after that, we have that. But don't forget this, now I hope you got some today. Mullet is the Punta Gorda fish. All right, so when we have our day, all the men are out frying up some mullet, and the women make macaroni and cheese and collard greens and cornbread. And so we serve all of that, and everybody just has a wonderful time. We all celebrate together because this is a very, very special day.
Wow.
This has certainly taught me a lot, so I appreciate our conversation. Is there anything more you would like to say?
No, I don't think so. I just that we colored are just very thankful for this day. The fact that our ancestors, our prayers, you don't know how long we prayed. Our prayers were finally answered.
Yes.
And so May 20th is a very special day for us. And it is a way to honor our enslaved ancestors. And so we remember them, especially here in Florida. And Lizzie, let me say this. Thank you for coming down here and covering this celebration for us. Thank you for caring enough to come down. I know it's a long trip, honey, by wagon, or maybe you're able to take the train, whatever it was. I know it's a long trip, we're in a long, hard trip. But thank you for caring enough about our celebration to come and share it. You can share it with people all over the state from your